Welcome to Rockin' edition of Rockin' Recovery. I'm your host, Jay. My next guest is, I probably will not butcher your name at all, Katie Lane.
Yeah, it sounds as it's spelled. Yes, Katie Lain. Very
At
nice
least
to
I
meet you.
didn't butcher that one. The last one, I have problems with the last name, so I'm glad you're here. You're here to tell your story on whatever it is you want to tell. What we do here is talk about addiction and recovery and mental health, and those are two topics close to my heart. So I'll just let you introduce yourself and continue that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Jay. This is something that's very close to my heart as well as someone who personally struggled with alcohol for nearly 10 years and got free from the addiction through a treatment that's actually been around for over 30 years, but is wildly underutilized and unknown. In fact, when I learned about it, I just like happened upon it through a YouTube video. So a bit about my backstory, and I'll, talk about the treatment as well. I developed an alcohol addiction around the age of 21. Before that, I'd been drinking and partying like a lot of kids do in the US. I even had a fake ID. I was going out to bars, buying alcohol, all the stuff. But I didn't develop a dependency to it during that time. It was more like partying and experimenting. And then I'd go weeks or months without drinking. Yes, I would binge and black out, but it wasn't this compulsion driving me necessarily. It was more like partying. And then around the age of 21, I started hanging around some people who were very heavy drinkers, like daily binge kind of whiskey, vodka kind of drinkers. And at the time, I kind of looked at that and I was like, why do you want to drink every day? Like, that's weird. But within a couple of months, I started kind of developing my own daily drinking habit and started to realize, oh, this is actually kind of fun. Now I know why people do it every day. And at the time, again, I was in my early 20s thinking this is just something that people my age are supposed to do. It's harmless. When I get a bit older, I'll kind of rein it in. Never thought I would develop an addiction to alcohol because I thought that was something that happened to like other people, like I pictured the homeless man under the bridge with drinking out of the paper bag kind of thing. I've since learned that's just like a crazy stereotype that is not true whatsoever. But I realized I was addicted to alcohol a couple years into drinking that way when I tried to take a break from drinking. I'd been drinking every day for more than a year. And that scared me a little bit because I was like, I don't even remember the last day that I didn't have a drink. Like I've been drinking for so long every day. And so I took a 7-day break. And to my surprise, it was really, really hard to do. I was white knuckling it. I wanted to drink every day. I was just taking a sleeping pill to go to bed at 7 so that I wouldn't be tempted to drink right after work. I made it the 7-day break, and right at day 8, I went back to drinking and was kind of back where I was. And so that's when I realized I had a problem with alcohol. I That was kind of like that 7-day break was really my first start at tons of attempts, probably dozens of attempts of trying to quit or moderate drinking for years. And I made it 6 months sober one time. But in the back of my mind during that whole sobriety period, I wanted to drink. And it was just truly white knuckled, kind of forcing it, just distracting myself so that I wouldn't drink. And eventually I returned to drinking again. It was a horrible relapse. It was back where I started. And then kind of continued on this cycle of, I'd try to take a day long break. Oh, am I here still?
Oh, yeah, you're still here. I don't know what happened.
Okay, cool.
I have no idea what happened. Technical difficulties. Don't know what happened.
Yeah, so I would try to take breaks from drinking, and they were always very forced and difficult, and I was never successful at them. I was definitely not a normal drinker. And then in 2017, one hungover day, I was like scouring the internet. I was always looking for alternative solutions. Like there's got to be something to heal people of alcohol addiction. It's the 21st century. There's got to be something. And that's when I stumbled on a treatment that just changed my life. The treatment's called the Sinclair method, and it's named after the researcher who discovered it, Dr. David Sinclair. And he discovered a couple of things. One thing he discovered is that there's a phenomenon known as the alcohol deprivation effect. And essentially what that showed in rat studies is that when they take rats that are addicted to alcohol and they take away the alcohol, what happens is their motivation for it increases, or their craving for it increases. And if and when the alcohol is reintroduced, they end up binging on it because they've been deprived of it. And the same thing has been shown with humans as well. For a lot of people, when we're addicted to alcohol and we quit drinking, what happens is we experience a sort of deprivation from it. Our brain does. And a lot of people will report that they're thinking about drinking all the time. They have a big craving for alcohol. And I believe that's one of the big reasons a lot of people struggle to stay sober is because they just want to drink. And so Dr. David Sinclair kind of discovered this phenomenon. And then with that, he discovered the treatment now known as the Sinclair method, which essentially works with your brain to help your brain unlearn alcohol addiction. And that's really something that I learned back then, and I've found to be even more true today, is that the brain is really the kind of root of an alcohol addiction. That's the core problem. We learn it in our brain, in the pleasure center in our brain. And with the Sinclair method protocol, what it does is it helps the brain unlearn the alcohol addiction. And it does that by taking a medication called naltrexone that's taken before drinking. And this medicine's been around for decades. It's generic, it's cheap, it's non-addictive, it's widely available. And this medicine is taken before drinking. So it's not an abstinence-based protocol, which I know can be controversial or is confusing for some people. But what I loved about it is that I tried abstinence and it didn't work for me long term. So thinking, oh my gosh, I can keep drinking but heal my brain. This is incredible. So following the protocol, the medication is taken before drinking. And over time, what happens is the medicine interrupts the reward pathway that usually drives the reward and compulsion to keep drinking. And over about 6, 12, 18 months, the brain unlearns the addiction because you're doing the behavior of drinking and you're not getting the same level of reward anymore. And when it's unlearned, kind of the simplest way to put it is the brain is put back to the place it was in before somebody ever had the alcohol addiction. So typically they're not thinking about drinking anymore. They're not craving alcohol. They can still drink if they want to, but usually when they do, they have one or two, they have control, they have an off switch, they become a normal drinker. So that's really like the 101 of the protocol. Yeah, and a bit about my story. So I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Absolutely. So early on in recovery, well, let's start off is why did you start drinking? Was it just to fit in? Was it just to feel good about yourself? Was there like residual trauma? Was it just a way to cope?
Honestly, it was quite innocent. And I didn't I went through the DARE program, a lot of people know in school, to kind of keep kids off drugs and alcohol.
Is your brain on drugs? Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So I remember that stuff, but I honestly didn't take it seriously how addictive alcohol was. I was kind of naive, just thinking, oh, this is a phase. I'm going to party and then I'll easily kind of rein it in one day because I'd never had an addiction to anything at the age of 21. So when I started drinking, it wasn't to cope. It was more, yeah, to fit in, to have fun. I started making fancy cocktails and stuff. It was cool to be able to buy alcohol at the store and have drinks. I was like, this is actually really fun. Like
I'm
now
adulting. This is adult stuff. Yeah.
exactly. Now I know why people like to drink. So it was fun initially, but because I became a daily drinker fairly quickly, it became something that I used for everything in life to celebrate, to cope, to obliterate my mind, whatever
So
the
you were
occasion.
basically rewiring your brain to say, oh, when I feel bad, I'm going to go drink. When I feel good, I'm going to go drink. Oh, now and then your brain started to relate those feelings to the substance.
Exactly. Yeah. So
So
everything was a trigger. Everything. Sunny day, cloudy day, a movie, anything and everything. I'd be like, oh, cool, let's drink. Like any free moment I had, I wanted to drink. I was
oh,
even
cool, I
drinking.
woke up. Let's drink.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So when did you start really noticing that it was taking a toll on your life, and what made you want to turn around?
I think just like the daily fog and hangover, whether it was a mild hangover and I was like sweaty palms, anxiety, headache, or if I was literally like throwing up in the toilet, just kind of that daily fog, starting to realize that I don't feel great as a result of my drinking. And that was kind of becoming a new normal for me. Also just realizing that I didn't have control. And at first I saw that as kind of fun, like, oh my gosh, I blacked out last night. That's hilarious. But then I started doing riskier things and just honestly dumber things while I was drinking, like drinking and driving or
Mm.
going to places alone that I shouldn't be going, experimenting with other drugs, not knowing where they came from. The list kind of goes on. And so seeing myself kind of put myself in riskier situations and see that I didn't have control over drinking, to where it wasn't me consciously saying, "Hey, we're going to dinner. Let's have a couple beers with it." It was like, "Where's the beer? I need a drink." And prioritizing it over everything more and more. There's a great quote by Andrew Huberman, which I think so perfectly summarizes an addiction. He says, "An addiction is the gradual narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure." And I just found that to be so true. Like within about a year of starting to drink a lot and daily, alcohol became the only thing I was focused on for pleasure, for reward, for celebration, for relief. It was like something I put on a pedestal.
And a lot of people start off in the rooms of AA, and which is a great program. It works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For those that it doesn't work for, I'm glad you found another solution. But did you try the AA route? Did you try meetings and all this before discovering the Sinclair method?
I only went to 2 AA meetings, and the main reason for that was I was in my mid-20s, and the meetings I went to was a small room of men probably in their 60s, and I just didn't relate with the scenario and the community, I guess, that was there. So I didn't give it a sincere try, but I did go to that a couple of times. My approach before the Sinclair method was I tried a lot of different kind of spiritual things or human development type things. If I was taking workshops or changing my diet or improving my just personality or personal development kind of things, I was like, maybe this will kind of give me an aha moment to help myself not want to drink. Like I'll have a reason not to drink. And those things maybe worked temporarily, but not long term for me. They would kind of serve as a distraction. But I think if I went back to the number one reason why moderating or quitting my drinking was so hard was the craving. Like even when I was sober 6 months, I wanted to drink every day. And so even though I was not drinking, I was still controlled by the alcohol because I was thinking about it all of the time. But yeah, my dad is sober because of AA. I'm very thankful the program exists. But it just, for a few reasons at that time, it didn't seem like a good fit for me.
And a lot of times what it takes for us to get sober, get clean, whatever it is that connection and that relating to other people. That's why I think for the younger generations, the AA route does not work.
Mm.
And because they view it just like you said, there's a bunch of old geezers, talking about whatever. They've lived their life and they're drinking coffee, and it's like a cliquey or almost cult-like atmosphere. AA is not a cult. And I approve of AA. I am a big believer in supporting of all pathways to recovery.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there before I got hammered by AA people saying, "Oh, it's not a cult." I know it's not a cult. I believe in it. Sorry, But I think that's a big reason why some people have a hard time adjusting to AA, because not only is it that there's that you go there to look good for something. If you got in trouble in courts, or if you got in trouble with something, you could go to AA and look good. You're not really trying to find anything. You're trying to look good. Or it was ordered, or, attend an AA meeting. You've got to go to AA meetings. And some of the policies and procedures are great they work. If you do the steps, they do work. And, so I'm glad you found the Sinclair method, yet I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going to go with that. But along with that, the younger people need other ways. So what brought you into the discovery of, was it your own research? Did somebody recommend it? How did you find that?
I found it by accident. So I was constantly searching, and to be honest, I would listen to people on like AA YouTube channels all the time. I would just like constantly have that content on, thinking like, I'd hear these stories of people who got sober, and I was like, but how did you get sober? Like it's very inspirational. But what I was hearing is like they basically quit drinking and never went back. But I was like, something's missing in that, because like, how did you do that? Because for me, man, I kept going back to drinking again because the craving was there. I remember, before I learned about the Sinclair method, I was kind of surrendering to the fact that I'm probably going to get cancer because I drink so much and die young. And I was like, well, if that's what happens, okay, because I loved to drink so much. Or, I mean, I don't even know that I loved it that much. It's that I was so addicted to it that the thought of never drinking again for the rest of my life seemed like a more terrible option than me like dying early because of drinking. So that was just like the insanity of the alcohol addicted brain. But I was always scouring the internet looking for inspiring content or just information about how people overcame alcohol addiction. And that's when I stumbled on a TEDx talk that is still on YouTube called How I Overcame Alcoholism by Claudia Christian, where she talks about her experience using this medication and this protocol that addresses alcohol addiction neurologically. And her story made so much sense to me, and I just knew after watching that I had to give it a try. At first, I was like, this seems too good to be true. But I was like so hopeful and so excited because I'd never heard of it before. And it just made sense. The basic science, her talk, she talked about her struggle with alcohol. I could just relate with everything. So that's how I learned about it. And then my next step then was to get the medication, which is the core component of this protocol. And to my surprise, even though it's been FDA approved for alcohol since 1994, it's not addictive, it's generic. It does require a prescription, but it's been around for over 30 years and proven to treat alcohol. I asked 5 doctors in my area for a prescription, even addiction specialists, and they wouldn't prescribe it to me. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, this seems like it could really help, but nobody will prescribe it. I can explain why I think that is, but long story short, I eventually found a doctor that specialized in the method and did prescribe me the medication in July of 2017, and the rest is history. It just changed my life over the course of 1 year, totally changed my life.
Why do you think that, if there's this drug out there that's going to help you, this procedure that out there that's going to help you and help others, and it's proven to help, why do you think it was hidden for so long? Because I know naloxone, what'd you call it? Naltrexone?
Naltrexone. Yeah, naltrexone.
Naltrexone. I know others that have been on it, and it does work. Why do you think nowadays, I don't know, 2025, I think it's more widely prescribed for people that are searching for it? I don't know. Don't know. But why do you think it was so like undercover or hidden?
And you're right. It is more accessible today, almost, 8 years later, more than 8 years later now, than it was in 2017. But even still today, I get emails, messages from people regularly. My doctor won't prescribe it to me. And I think a few reasons for that. There is this kind of just collective belief, I think, as a society and in the medical community, that abstinence is best and you should go to AA or rehab or some type of formal treatment program. So that kind of bias is number one. Number two is that a lot of general doctors who could totally prescribe the medication just aren't comfortable with it because they weren't trained in medical school for addiction medicine. And so they're just like, that's not my wheelhouse, like go somewhere else, or refer them out. Because naltrexone is generic, also, there's not any major pharmaceutical company or pharmaceutical reps, knocking down doctors' doors saying, hey, prescribe this to people for alcohol. There's no money to be made in it. So it kind of it didn't get any kind of recognition or anything, especially when it first came out and even still. And the other thing is when naltrexone first came out, there was this black box warning on it, which is kind of, when doctors are prescribing it, it's this like huge caution with this medication. This warning was around it causing liver damage. And this black box warning has since been removed because the information was incorrect. What the research shows with regards to naltrexone causing liver damage is that it could potentially happen in doses of 300 milligrams or more per day, but the dose that's used for alcohol typically is around 50 milligrams. So it's much lower, and it's about as safe, or my medical advisor in my program even said it's safer than taking a Tylenol for your liver. So there was this period of time where it had this like inaccurate warning on it, which again has since been removed. And so, but some people, pharmacists and doctors, still have this belief that naltrexone is dangerous for the liver, but people could go on Google right now and find that to not be true. And there's been so much research into it. So those are a few reasons why, that it's wildly underprescribed and underutilized.
So I know we just talked about why you became an addict and when it started affecting your life. What was the comeback like for you? What the deciding factor, the deciding moment? I've had enough. I'm doing this. And when was that? And how did you come to that point? And you know, what made you decide that? Because I know earlier you were saying I don't want to not drink for the rest of my life. You
Yeah.
know, so what made you decide enough is enough? I know you said the brain fog and everything else, but you're still in that mindset of I want to drink, but
Mhm.
can you drink on that whatever you said?
Naltrexone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's interesting because I did believe before I learned about this treatment that, like, maybe if I hit a rock bottom moment, then it would motivate me enough to change. And in some ways, I was kind of praying for that. Like, okay, maybe if something bad enough happens, then I'll be
mhm,
motivated to change. But what I found is that bad things would happen. Like, I wound up in the hospital with a bilateral pulmonary embolism, blood clots in my lungs.
and it still
Um,
wasn't bad enough.
Nope, and I thought I was in the hospital bed thinking, "This is it. This is the thing that's gonna cause me to quit drinking." I was in the hospital for several days, put on a medication that my doctor told me not to drink on, a blood thinner. I was like, "Okay, this is it. I'm gonna quit." 4 days after getting out of the hospital, I was back to drinking again, even though I wasn't supposed to. So I was, like, willing to sacrifice my, honestly, health and life to keep drinking. Almost got a DUI, again, just
Mhm.
so many rock bottom moments that I thought
You
they
know,
made it.
the rock bottoms for everybody's different. I don't like to talk about rock bottoms because across the board they're all different. It could have been you just had
Yeah,
a thought and it's like I am done. I'm
right.
tired of it, and that's your rock bottom.
Yeah.
So rock bottoms are there for the people that need them, and to make all a rock bottom is a moment that grabs your attention and makes you want to change. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a good way to put it. Yeah.
It's really easy. It's just something that memorable, and you don't want to do it again, and that's that.
Yeah.
No, nothing else. That's all a rock bottom is. It could be walking out the door and you tripped. That's your rock bottom. It could be just a thought of I don't like the price of this freaking alcohol anymore. I quit.
Yeah.
And early on in recovery, and I know you said you tried other ways. How did the Sinclair method? Why do you think it worked for you?
Well, I think it worked because I've been trying to fix my drinking for years, and I was really sick and tired of it. And the thing is that I think is important for people to know, sometimes people think, "Oh, if they're not really like if they say they wanna get sober, but they're not doing it, then they don't really want it." And honestly, I really wanted it. Like, I wanted to get better so bad, but again, the craving and the mental preoccupation with drinking, it's like it was a parasite in my brain that would just, like, control me and dictate my actions. Like, I would wind up at the liquor store even though I promised myself I wasn't gonna drink. It's like it was just this mental insanity. And so when I learned about naltrexone and the Sinclair method, I was allowed to drink on naltrexone because with this protocol, drinking is part of the Sinclair method. And there are people that take naltrexone if they're sober and it helps them stay sober because it's also an anti craving medication. But for me, I didn't want to quit drinking at that time. And I loved the idea of being able to get my control back over alcohol. And the method worked really, really well for me. It took time. Most people, it's not an overnight thing for most people. What it is more gradual reduction in drinking, gradual reduction in craving, and just generally seeing yourself get more control over alcohol and have less interest in alcohol, less of a desire or craving to drink. So I noticed a difference in the first week on the medication. I was a daily binge drinker, and within the first week, I had an alcohol free day that was not totally white knuckled. It was a little uncomfortable, but I was like, I just don't really feel like drinking today. And that was shocking to me because I could never have alcohol free days, like, unless I was really, really sick or forcing it and feeling guilty because I've been drinking too much. And I would still want to drink that day. But the difference with this day was that I just didn't feel like drinking. Also, when I started naltrexone, I never blacked out again. I was still drinking quite a bit on the medication, but I didn't drink to the point of blacking out anymore, which was huge for me. And then over the course of a year that I was on the protocol, my drinking just gradually decreased. My cravings gradually decreased. And by about 8 or 9 months in, I was drinking about 1 or 2 drinks once or twice a month. And that was just all I wanted to drink. It was like, oh, it's Friday. I'm going to go out to dinner with my husband and have a glass of wine. And that would be it. I wouldn't want more. I wouldn't overdrink. And then I'd go weeks again without drinking.
I
Um,
know one of the other big drugs that was widely recommended was antabuse. I think that's what it was called.
Hmm.
It would make you sick and whatever else. So you're saying this other one allowed you to drink and just cut back gradually?
Hmm. Yeah, it's not like Antabuse, and a lot of people confuse it with that. Because Antabuse, if you drink on it, you get really sick. That's kind of the purpose of that medication. But with naltrexone, it's perfectly fine for people to drink on the medication, and it actually works really well because you drink on naltrexone and you don't get the same level of reward from the alcohol. You can still get drunk. It can still be fun. I enjoy drinking on the medication just fine, but it wasn't as rewarding. It's kind of like if you're having a Coca-Cola, you have one or two and you're like, meh, I'm good. And that's what alcohol did for me over time. It was like, yeah, I don't want anymore. It gave me this off switch and satisfaction. So yeah, I drank on the medication for a year. And then eventually after a little more than a year on the protocol, I ended up going alcohol free totally, not by forcing it or just, that wasn't even my goal. I was like, "Oh, I wanna be able to drink on occasion or on weekends," and that was my goal for the time I was on it, but I just got to a place where I tell people that would forget to drink, like, it would be months, and I'd be like, "I
Mhm.
haven't had a drink, I have no desire to drink." So I did end up quitting drinking completely in 2018, and I don't take naltrexone anymore, and I've been completely free from the addiction, free from craving, free from alcohol ever since. It's incredible.
So early on in recovery, did you have triggers and how'd you deal with those?
No, the Sinclair method is different because when you have a trigger, you can drink.
You
And
can still
so,
drink. Yeah.
yeah. So I
It's
guess you could say I did have triggers on the
yeah.
Sinclair method and I was drinking, but nowadays, after a year on the protocol, what the end result of this treatment is something called pharmacological extinction of the addiction. So the addiction
Mm.
essentially gets extinguished or reversed from your brain. So I tell people that I feel like trigger proof and relapse proof now because I just don't have any desire to drink. It's like I don't smoke cigarettes, so if everyone around me is smoking, I'm not like, "Oh, I wish I could smoke right now." I was never addicted to cigarettes. So I feel like my brain is back in that place it was in, like, as if I never got the addiction to alcohol. It's been reversed. So in the beginning doing the treatment, there were triggers, and my response was to drink to them to help my brain unlearn the addiction and unlearn that trigger, trigger the trigger would happen. It's 5 o'clock.
Right.
I want to drink. I drink. I don't get the same level of reward. So my
Gotcha.
brain learns, oh, it's not as rewarding. You do that
Oh,
over and over again. You're like, nah, I don't want to drink.
so you basically were telling you the drug is telling your body it's not worth it anymore. You're
Right.
not getting the same pleasures, or it's not working the same. You're not forgetting anything. You don't need this to feel this way anymore. Guess what? Why are you doing it still? If you don't need it, you type
Yep.
thing.
The brain loves to learn, and it's always changing, it's always learning. And so if we give it the right environment to learn or unlearn things, it's incredible how it changes. So yeah, my brain learned over time that alcohol is not the reward it once was, and it was really cool to be somebody who could drink in moderation. Like I remember this time specifically, this
A
a
normie
normal a
again.
normie yep, a
Normie.
normie. I would literally go to a restaurant, I'd have a glass of wine with dinner, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll have another glass, that sounds good," and I would leave half of it there and, like, walk away and not finish it, like, go home and pay the bill, and that was, like, something I always dreamed of, like, what's with those people who can leave alcohol in the glass? That just seems impossible
It's
and, like, it's
alcohol
totally
abuse, damn it.
yeah, but I became that person where I was like, "I can't finish it, it doesn't sound good," and so it was so cool to see that level of empowerment and control over alcohol again.
Now, do you contribute any of that to like just the urge of self-control, or the willpower, or was it actually all the program and the protocol and the Sinclair method? What do you attribute it all to the Sinclair method?
That's a really good question. It wasn't willpower, I will say that. Naltrexone, the way it worked, it literally and I don't wanna pretend like, "Oh, it's just the medication and that's it," because it
Right.
definitely required habit change and, like, mindful drinking and, like, I've been drinking every day for 10 years, like, I've gotta discover some other habits and hobbies and ways to cope, when I was stressed before, I always went to alcohol, so I did that for a while on the Sinclair method, but I was like, I don't want to lean on alcohol anymore. So I've got to figure other things out. So that incident in the restaurant was genuinely me just not having an interest in the alcohol. And I attribute that mostly to the medication and the Sinclair method, kind of fixing my brain. But it's also I noticed if I drank alcohol with food on this treatment, it was like the medication worked even better. It was like I would feel
Mm.
satisfied sooner. So noticing those things, I was sipping the alcohol, not chugging it like I used to. Yeah. So I would say it was not an act of willpower. Like, oh, okay, I have to stop. I'm gonna put this down. It was me genuinely like if you get a big piece of cake and it's very
Losing
sweet.
the urge. You just
Yeah. You're like,
losing the
I've had
urge to
enough.
even want. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
That's
satisfied.
that's amazing because I know a lot of people struggle with those urges are what keep them in addiction, keep them going back, keep maybe even relapse. Did you have any relapse? Have you relapsed? Well, I guess you really can't because you're allowed to. This is, yeah, it's new to me, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm learning as everybody else is learning that hasn't been on it. So it's like, did you relapse? Of course I relapsed. I still drank.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it really wasn't a relapse because you weren't drinking, you weren't getting the same effect.
Yeah, it's kind of like this method. The only way people will quote unquote relapse is if they drink again without the medication. So I was drinking on the protocol for a year. That was part of the treatment. And if I wanted to drink tonight, I can. I would just take naltrexone beforehand. It would protect my
Ah,
brain. And I'd probably have a drink and be like, okay, that's all I want. If I were to drink without naltrexone, I would consider that, a relapse because the brain has unlearned the alcohol addiction, but it can relearn it over a couple of
right.
months. So that's where
Ooh,
that's where they
it's
can
that whole
relapse.
dangerous thing. It's like, ooh, I remember how this feels. Y-
Right. And
Okay.
and for most people, it doesn't happen instantly. If they've been on the medication for a while, it takes a month or two. But if I were to ever drink again, when I might drink again, I don't know. I would just take naltrexone beforehand because I don't ever want to go back to where I was.
How hard was it to get through the COVID era? Because that was right in the height of your recovery, basically. How'd you manage that?
Well,
I don't
actually,
know why.
so
I don't know why I'm asking these questions because it doesn't really apply. Because I mean, it does, but it doesn't.
well, and it wasn't actually in the height of my recovery because I started the method in July of 2017 and I quit
Okay.
drinking in 2018. So I was
Okay.
a couple of years alcohol free. But I will say during that time, my dad got really sick and we thought we were going to lose him. We didn't, but that was probably one of the most difficult trials of my life. And it was a real test of like, am I really recovered from the addiction or am I going to want to turn to alcohol to cope with this? And it was amazing to see. I literally had zero trigger or interest in drinking. I was just like, that doesn't even appeal to me. No way. I'm not going to do it. When, like in the past, drinking to cope was like my favorite excuse to drink. Like, oh, let's go get a couple of bottles of whiskey
Oh,
going
I
through
feel
some
I'm
bars.
in a bad mood. Maybe this will cheer me up
Mm-hmm.
or help me forget.
Help me forget. Obliterate the brain. Yeah.
And
So,
I like to say addiction or any type of substance use disorder, substance use addiction is just a side effect of whatever we cope with.
mm,
So uh,
yeah.
congratulations on you for being that sober for this long already and not having the urge anymore. I'm glad the Sinclair method works. Like I said, I've never heard of it, and I've heard a lot of them here lately. I so it's awesome that to find another one that the people that don't want to quit
Yeah.
don't really have to,
Mm-hmm.
but are still they're not going to get the same effect, the self-harming, the dangerous situation effect as drinking without it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are some of the misconceptions along with this method and protocol?
One that I see a lot is people say, "Oh, you're just replacing one drug for another." So they think that
Uh,
naltrexone's like a substitute
yeah.
when that's completely false simply because naltrexone's not addictive at all. You get no pleasure from taking naltrexone. In fact, like I would have to like when I took it, I would have to make a note that I took it because I couldn't tell whether or not I took it. So, if you're starting to smoke a lot of weed instead of drinking, that would be a replacement because you're getting a high from something else. But what naltrexone is doing, it's like a biohack in the brain. It's just interrupting the reward loop. So that's one where people think that you're replacing one for another. People kind of talk down to me that I used a medication to drink. Like in AA, they say there's no easier, softer way. And I kind of get flack for that. But I'm like, if there's a medicine that works to heal the brain of alcohol addiction, like why wouldn't you use it.
Why
I'm
wouldn't
not.
you want it? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want it? If a doctor prescribes me that and says, "Hey, take it like ordered and you'll be just fine," guess what? I'm going to take it.
Right. I know.
It's like cancer or freaking being sick. You're having virus. You go get checked out and say, "Hey, this is what's wrong with you." But if you take this miracle cure, acetaminophen or penicillin, you'll get cured of it. Damn straight, I'm taking that shit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and another thing is that people think naltrexone, like I mentioned, is damaging for the liver, or that it's dangerous to drink on it, which there's research out there to show otherwise. A lot of research, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials to show otherwise. Yeah, so those are some of the ones, and like, yeah, of course, like a lot of people aren't open to like a harm reduction method that isn't just strict abstinence. So maybe they don't take this treatment seriously.
So
But
for all those people, I've got to say, what does coffee do to you? What is caffeine? It's a mind and mood altering substance. So you better look in the mirror before you judge somebody else on their recovery.
this is true. Yes, this is true.
It's a fact. Caffeine is bad for you. Dangerous, I should say. It's just another habit forming addiction.
Yeah.
And it's mind and mood altering. So that would technically classify it as not abstinence.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, one of the counselors in our program, I love this little phrase she says, where she says, drinking isn't the problem. It's the excessive drinking that's the problem. And so with this treatment, if people get to a place like I did, and most people do, it has a very high success rate where they're drinking once or twice a month or once or twice a week, and they're not getting drunk. They're having a beer with dinner or whatever. I don't see the harm in that. And people will get mad at me for saying that because they're, just believing abstinence is best, which abstinence is best for some. I don't even drink anymore, but I don't think it's up to me to say, oh, you shouldn't have that beer with dinner,
So the people, the family that goes out, or the special events, or even, it could be daily. Who cares? But the person that can have one, I'm good. After work, it's a cold one. I drink Coca-Cola, so I pop like 2 cans of Coca-Cola and I down them. I like Coca-Cola. That's my addiction. Now, but for those people, why would they? What would make? I don't understand the judgment. If somebody wants to do something and it's not an addiction and it's not harmful, why can't you support it?
Yeah. And I'm thankful for people like you, because there are voices out there like you who are like supportive of all alternative paths or all paths truly. And, I think there's a few loud voices maybe that are not, and they kind of come through the comments.
I have seen a lot of people on social media, on other platforms, that the only way is abstinence. I'll tell you what, for me, yes, absolutely. But that's not the case for everybody.
Right.
I 100% agree. And I was a drug addict, and 100% abstinence is the only way for me,
Yeah, totally.
And I would never replace one habit with another because I have that addictive personality.
Right.
And if one is starting to make me feel, I can handle it, makes my mind, I can handle this other one. Okay. Well, guess what? Then I'm done. I'm back in the gutters, back homeless, back in the streets, back doing whatever stuff, back to prison, whatever the case may be. That would be me, And I think a lot of addicts have that mindset too. And that's why for a lot of drug addicts, abstinence is the only way, you know. And for alcoholics too, sometimes abstinence is the only way, because if I have one or two, unless you've worked on yourself, unless you've rewired your brain, and unless you've got medical assisted treatment, which that's not an addiction, that's a form of treatment. Hold on. The words are in it's in the title, treatment.
Yeah.
As long as you're using it by the proper way, as long as you're not abusing it, you're fine.
And that's something I want to say too, just to clarify. Like, sometimes people say, oh, so I'm 6 years sober, you're telling me I should go drink. And that's not what I'm saying at all. This treatment is for people who are currently drinking and can't stay sober, or they're not ready to stay sober right now. Like, they can't imagine quitting. And so this treatment really meets those people where they're at. And it's like, okay, well, let's start your recovery by getting you to drink less. And for a lot of people, that's a much more approachable, doable first step than going abstinent and never touching alcohol again. So I'm not advocating if you're sober and doing well in recovery to start drinking on the Sinclair method. But for those, countless hundreds of thousands of people out there that are struggling with alcohol and can't cut back, can't quit, like this is a great treatment for them.
It absolutely is 100% a great treatment. And I'm glad that there's more. I'm glad I'm learning something today, because you know what? I can recommend it to people if they're just not ready to put it down now.
Right.
It's like, hey, why don't you check this out? Here's some, why don't you check this person out? Why don't you look into this? And that just puts more arsenal in my toolbox,
Right.
more tools in my toolbox to help the next person. So thank you for coming on here and teaching me, and not only me, all these other people about the Sinclair method. And what are some of the other topics that you would like to discuss about the Sinclair method that we haven't already touched on?
I would just encourage people to do your research into the treatment. Don't just take my word for it. All I am is I'm a mouthpiece for this treatment that existed basically, it started when I was a child in the 90s. And it's been researched for decades, and it continues to be researched, and more it's getting more media attention about naltrexone and the Sinclair method. There's more books coming out about it. There's articles, so people can look into it, for themselves or for a loved one. And I think when people can understand the basic neuroscience of how the brain develops an addiction to alcohol and how this treatment helps to reverse it, essentially, just a simple way to describe it, it makes sense. And that's what a lot of people say. Like, once they understood the basic protocol and how it works, they're like, yeah, it just makes sense. And they have a lot of hope around it. Also, what's really incredible about this treatment is that you can do it from home. You don't have to tell anyone you're doing it. You don't have to interrupt your life and go away to a rehab. I was just talking to someone the other day. They're like, I'm the provider for my family. I have 2 kids. I can't go to rehab. Plus, it's, the rehab bill, it can be huge. And because naltrexone is generic, it's pretty darn cheap, especially compared to how much we're spending on alcohol. So for people to know that like this treatment truly meets you where you're at, it can be done from home. I've worked with people who didn't tell anyone in their lives that they were doing this because their drinking had become like a secret problem, and it wasn't destroying their lives to where everyone knew about it, but drinking a couple of bottles of wine a night and feeling a lot of shame around it. So you can decide who you want to, talk to about your recovery, if you want to tell anyone or if not, or at what point you want to tell people. And also it's such a personal journey. And so to be your own advocate, like if someone watching this goes to their doctor to ask for naltrexone like I did, and the doctor says no, don't stop there. Like there's other doctors that prescribe it now, and don't like take their no or their judgment as something like wrong about you. It's just they don't know about it. And so being your own advocate, and if one method doesn't work to get you free from the addiction, try something else. There's more and more treatments coming out now. There's naltrexone and the Sinclair method. There's neurofeedback. People are trying different types of therapies and all that. So if one method doesn't work, just keep trying until you find the one that does for you.
Absolutely. And again, thank you, Katie. There needs to be more people like you doing the next right thing and speaking out on something, that might be little known, yet, it does help people. And it's proven to help people,
Yeah.
and what's funny is just earlier, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I seen the whole David Sinclair lab rat test, where yeah, I'm like, David Sinclair, who the hell is this? And I'm like, what are they talking about? Now watch them take it away, and they search for it, and it gradually, lowered.
Yeah.
And so I watched that whole experiment, and it was
That's so
crazy. I'm like, all right, yeah, we'll talk about this. I didn't even know it's called the Sinclair method, but when you explained it, it was awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. And for people to know too, I learned about it through that TEDx talk that's still on YouTube. There's also a documentary about this treatment called One Little Pill. There's a book about the protocol called The Cure for Alcoholism by Dr. Roy Escapa, the medically proven way to eliminate alcohol addiction. So there's resources out there where you can learn more about it as well and the science behind it. Yeah, so check it
You
out. I
know,
also
and
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I think it's great that you're able to do that because honestly, a lot of, and especially you didn't have to tell anybody that you're doing it
Yeah,
and suffer that more shame, that fear of judgment, that fear of criticism, that fear of letting somebody know that I've got a problem. I can't do
right.
that. You know, you didn't have to suffer as much of that with this program either.
Yeah. No, and to be honest, I didn't even tell my own husband I was starting the treatment until I'd been on it for a month and I knew it was working because he knew I drank. He knew I drank a lot, but I hid it a lot from him and I'd always have excuses like, "Oh, I forget to eat when I drink, so I got really drunk." But truly I was just like drinking a lot, you know? So it was really cool to be able to start it and like you said, like not have to like tell the world that I'm struggling. And then when I started to see it work, that's when I was starting to tell people. And, you know, we were talking about misconceptions, and sometimes people will say, well, this wouldn't work for a real alcoholic. And I just want to say that this doesn't have 100% success rate. Like this treatment, nothing does. But I have seen it work for the spectrum of alcohol use disorder. And some people don't like that word, but I like the word. From people who are more mild alcohol use disorder, where maybe they're only drinking a few glasses of wine a night, but it's every night, to the person who's drinking a fifth of vodka every day and throwing up blood kind of thing. I've seen it work for all types of drinkers. So it doesn't, there's not like a cutoff point. Like if your drinking is this bad, then it's not going to work for you. I think the thing that impacts how well it's going to work for somebody is really somebody's personal motivation and desire to change. But again, it doesn't work for everybody. I don't want to pretend that it does, but it does have a very high success rate for most people.
Well, one last thing, if you want anybody to know what do you want somebody to take away from this conversation?
That, you know, alcohol addiction is not a lifelong illness that you're stuck with necessarily. It can be reversed in the brain. I'm proof of that. So are countless other people. I have a ton of Sinclair Method success stories on my YouTube channel. People are welcome to watch. It's under Thrive Alcohol Recovery. Yeah, I just encourage people that, you know, there's not, like you talked about, there's not one path that's right for everyone. And if you've tried something, even if you've tried the Sinclair Method and it's not working for you, try something else. If you tried AA and it's not working, try something else. Don't feel like, you know, you're the failure because the treatment that you're doing isn't working for you. Maybe it's not the right treatment for you. Just keep searching and keep researching, and I believe you will find the right one.
And that was Thrive Alcohol Recovery.
Yes, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. That's all our social medias as well. I put out a lot of content and educational material.
Instagram, all of it.
Instagram, TikTok, yeah, all of it.
Thrive Alcohol Recovery. Go check her out. Obviously, it's working. So if you want to learn some other method than AA, NA, and all the formal, most recognized big name groups, go check out the David Sinclair method, the Sinclair method, and look at Miss Lain.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate you having me on and being willing to have this conversation. I hope it helps, even if just it helps one person. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining me tonight or today, this afternoon, whatever time it is. Thank you for that. And I hope you have a great day. And until the next time, that's Rock and Recovery. See ya.
Bye.